First up at UFC Vegas 42, we have Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Un Jung. Un Jung, 14-2 overall, 4-0-1 in his last 5, with that one being a split draw to Sam Alvey. Kennedy Nzechukwu, 9-1 overall, 4-1 in his last 5, riding a 3-fight win streak. Un Jung is a technical boxer with solid wrestling. He's got good clinch work. He's coming off a dominant win over William Knight where he had 8 takedowns and plenty of control. That's the fight that he went in there and just kept taking William Knight down with the same takedown over and over. And honestly, it was a little shocking because William Knight was a decent high school wrestler. And obviously this isn't high school, but Un Jung had no wrestling whatsoever, developed it in the last few years, and was able to implement that game plan, knowing full well the power that William Knight possesses. Kennedy Nzechukwu is super long. He has a ton of power, and he has a solid takedown defense at 80%, and he is never out of a fight. If you go back, you watch that Carlos Ulberg fight, Kennedy was on the wrong side of most of those exchanges. He was on his way to losing a decision before he absolutely blasted Carlos for a come-from-behind win, and that is not unique to his career. It's a tricky matchup, right? Kennedy's got a ton of power, good takedown defense. We've seen Kennedy beat grapplers before too. Jung has good wrestling, technical striking, and we've seen him beat power punches before. My issue with Kennedy is he has no problem getting behind on rounds. No problem. And you cannot build a career on losing rounds and hoping for sort of a one-punch knockout, come-from-behind victory. And you can't bet on a guy that fights like that either. Especially against Jung, who has no problem taking you down, be boring, holding you there, and just riding out a decision. So I do have Un Jung winning this fight. He's the pick. The odds makers, I agree with these odds. I think they're pretty solid because Kennedy will always be live for a knockout. But Kennedy is tough, and I don't have a bet on this fight. But if I did, and I may touch this at some point, Kennedy to win inside the distance or decision no action may be a solid play because he can knock Jung out or just lose a wrestle decision the same way that William Knight did. And if he loses the decision, I get a refund. If he gets that come from behind knockout, I'd get paid. What do you think, Jakey boy?
Yeah, I agree with the inside the distance, but I also think that Kenny's going to win this fight. Maybe inside the distance, maybe not. And you mentioned it. He's one of those guys that isn't really winning a fight until he's winning the fight, right? Which doesn't really make sense, but it always seems like he's out of the fight, getting dominated, and all of a sudden he just ends up winning the fight. That Ulberg fight, you mentioned, Ulberg just kind of gassed out and he just jumped all over him with all that volume and just never stopped punching, like somebody mentioned in the live chat, and got that win. So I kind of feel like the UFC has something against Kennedy because first they put him against Paul Craig, a wrestler who, by the way, was 1-on-16 takedowns versus Kennedy. Then and he ended up losing that fight. He ended up getting taken down and submitted, but he was very tough against Paul Craig, and we know how good Paul Craig is. Then they put him against a jiu-jitsu guy who was 2 of 12 for takedowns and couldn't finish him. And then put him against a kickboxer who he got through. So I feel like they have something against this guy for some reason, but I just think that this comes down to can Jung get the takedowns, and I don't think he can. I think he proved against wrestlers before that he can withstand those takedowns. He's going to come with the volume, and it is kind of funny with Jung how he was a split decision. What was it with the win versus Sam Alvey or the loss versus Sam Alvey, and then it's like the complete opposite person of Sam Alvey.
It was a split draw.
Is William Knight. And he just completely dominates him physically. You know, the most physical person I've ever seen in my life. He just dominates him physically. So I don't think he's going to be able to do that against Kennedy. I don't think he's going to be able to get the takedowns. And Kennedy's just going to swarm him with that volume. So I kind of like the underdog play here. I'm not real confident in it, but I like Kennedy to win this fight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, like I said, Kennedy's great. He's got power. He's never out of a fight, which is fantastic, especially in a fight where he would probably be behind for a round or two. But my issue is that you just can't bet on a guy that has no problem falling behind a round or two. That makes that you lose some confidence there. But so DraftKings, I guess, do you like him at $7,900? Yeah, that's a decent value if you think he's going to win.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be inside the distance. Like you said, there's always that opportunity that he does get taken down and controlled by Jung, because we saw that against William Knight. So I wouldn't play him at 7,900.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it's risky because Kennedy is always live.
And just so you know, those odds are -115 for Jung, and Kennedy's -105 now. So they're moving.
So I did these graphics yesterday. So that's how much it moved in one day. I do think Un Jung at $8,300 might be a solid play because the amount of takedowns, if you go back to that William Knight fight, he had a ton of takedowns, a ton of control, and scored 1,000,000 points.
Paul Craig, 1 for 16.
What'd you say?
Paul Craig, 1 for 16.
Okay, what?
Paul Craig was 1 for 16 takedowns versus Kennedy. He's not going to be able to take him down.
Well, he's got good takedown defense, but we'll see. That's what makes these fights just so amazing.
We'll see.
What do you think of this monkey knife fight line? Frankly, if Un Jung gets the takedowns, 73.5, no problem, blow right past it. If he doesn't, I don't know how many he's going to be able to absorb and put out, but you raise the roof there. You're saying more and more?
Easy, more.
Yeah, I think it's probably more and more. They'll go at it. It should likely be a decision unless Kennedy gets a stoppage because Un's not going to pull off a stoppage. The only question is, does he get those takedowns? Because if he does not get the takedowns, do you still think he gets past 73?
Yeah, I think it's just, Kennedy's not going to knock you out with one punch power. He's just going to swarm you. So he's a decent striker as well. We didn't even realize he was a grappler until the William Knight fight. So I think it's just a long decision. One more.
Yeah, it should be an interesting fight. Honestly, it can either be really fun or super boring. So it's a interesting one to open the card. And just a reminder, this is a very early fight card. This is not the normal 9 p.m., whatever it is, main card start time. Before you go to wewantpicks.com/bets. We have 3 different betting partners. Jump into one of them. They all have deposit matches. Make a deposit. Let me know, and I will send you $50. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, however you want it, as a thank you for supporting us and our partners. wewantpicks.com/bets.